find uses for it, mother, and uses that would do us good. I would I knew where gold was buried. How hard I'd work to dig it up!' 'You do not know,' said his mother, rising from her seat and laying her hand upon his shoulder, 'what men have done to win it, and how they have found, too late, that it glitters brightest at a distance and turns quite dim and dull when handled.' 'Ay, ay, so you say, so you think,' he answered, still looking eagerly in the same direction. 'For all that, mother, I should like to try.' 'Do you not see,' she said, 'how red it is? Nothing bears so many stains of blood as gold. Avoid it. None have such cause to hate its name as we have. Do not so much as think of it, dear love. It has brought such misery and suffering on your head and mine as few have known, and God grant few may have to undergo. I would rather we were dead and laid down in our graves, than you should ever come to love it.' For a moment Barnaby withdrew his eyes and looked at her with wonder. Then, glancing from the redness in the sky to the mark upon his wrist, as if he would compare the two, he seemed about to question her with earnestness, when a new object caught his wandering attention, and made him quite forgetful of his purpose. This was a man with dusty feet and garments, who stood, bareheaded, behind the hedge that divided their patch of garden from the pathway, and leant meekly forward as if he sought to mingle with their conversation, and waited for his time to speak. His face was turned towards the brightness too, but the light that fell upon it showed that he was blind, and saw it not. 'A blessing on those voices,' said the wayfarer. 'I feel the beauty of the night more keenly when I hear them. They are like eyes to me. Will they speak again, and cheer the heart of a poor traveller?' 'Have you no guide?' asked the widow, after a moment's pause. 'None but that,' he answered, pointing with his staff towards the sun, 'and sometimes a milder one at night, but she is idle now.' 'Have you travelled far?' 'A weary way and long,' rejoined the traveller as he shook his head. 'A weary, weary way. I struck my stick just now upon the bucket of your well. Be pleased to let me have a draught of water, lady.' 'Why do you call me lady?' she returned. 'I am as poor as you.' 'Your speech is soft and gentle, and I judge by that,' replied the man. 'The coarsest stuffs and finest silks are, apart from a sense of touch, alike to me. I cannot judge you by your dress.' 'Come round this way,' said Barnaby, who had passed out at the garden gate, and now stood close beside him. 'Put your hand in mine. You're blind, and always in the dark, eh? Are you frightened in the dark? Do you see great crowds of faces now? Do they grin and chatter?' 'Alas!' returned the other, 'I see nothing. Waking or sleeping, nothing.' Barnaby looked curiously at his eyes, and touching them with his fingers, as an inquisitive child might, led him towards the house. 'You have come a long distance,' said the widow, meeting him at the door. 'How have you found your way so far?' 'Use and necessity are good teachers, as I have heard, the best of any,' said the blind man, sitting down upon the chair to which Barnaby had led him, and putting his hat and stick upon the red tiled floor. 'May neither you nor your son ever learn under them. They are rough masters.' 'You have wandered from the road too,' said the widow, in a tone of pity. 'Maybe, maybe,' returned the blind man with a sigh, and yet with something of a smile upon his face. 'That's likely. Handposts and milestones are dumb indeed to me. Thank you the more for this rest and this refreshing drink. As he spoke, he raised the mug of water to his mouth. It was clear and cold and sparkling, but not to his taste nevertheless, or his thirst was not very great, for he only wetted his lips and put it down again. He wore, hanging with a long strap round his neck, a kind of scrip or wallet, in which to carry food. The widow set some bread and cheese before him, but he thanked her, and said that through the kindness of the charitable he had broken his fast once since morning, and was not hungry. When he had made her this reply, he opened his wallet and took out a few pence, which was all it appeared to contain. "Might I make bold to ask," he said, turning towards where Barnaby stood looking on, "that one who has the gift of sight would lay this out for me in bread to keep me on my way? Heaven's blessing on the young feet that will bestir themselves in aid of one so helpless as a sightless man." Barnaby looked at his mother, who nodded assent. In another moment he was gone upon his charitable errand. The blind man sat listening with an attentive face, until long after the sound of his retreating footsteps was inaudible to the widow, and then said suddenly, and in a very altered tone, "There are various degrees and kinds of blindness, widow. There is the connubial blindness, ma'am, which perhaps you may have observed in the course of your own experience, and which is a kind of wilful and self-bandaging blindness. There is the blindness of party, ma'am, and public men, which is the blindness of a mad bull in the midst of a regiment of soldiers clothed in red. There is the blind confidence of youth, which is the blindness of young kittens, whose eyes have not yet opened on the world. And there is that physical blindness, ma'am, of which I am, contrary to my own desire, a most illustrious example. Added to these, ma'am, is that blindness of the intellect, of which we have a specimen in your interesting son, and which, having sometimes glimmerings and dawnings of the light, is scarcely to be trusted as a total darkness. Therefore, ma'am, I have taken the liberty to get him out of the way for a short time, while you and I confer together, and this precaution arising out of the delicacy of my sentiment towards yourself. You will excuse me, ma'am, I know." Having delivered himself of this speech with many flourishes of manner, he drew from beneath his coat a flat stone bottle, and holding the cork between his teeth, qualified his mug of water with a plentiful infusion of the liquor it contained. He politely drained the bumper to her health and the lady's, and setting it down empty, smacked his lips with infinite relish. "I am a citizen of the world, ma'am," said the blind man, corking his bottle, "and if I seem to conduct myself with freedom, it is therefore. You wonder who I am, ma'am, and what has brought me here. Such experience of human nature as I have, leads me to that conclusion, without the aid of eyes, by which to read the movements of your soul, as depicted in your feminine features. I will satisfy your curiosity immediately, ma'am, immediately." With that, he slapped his bottle on its broad back, and having put it under his garment as before, crossed his legs and folded his hands, and settled himself in his chair, previous to proceeding any further. The change in his manner was so unexpected, the craft and wickedness of his deportment were so much aggravated by his condition, for we are accustomed to see in those who have lost a human sense something in its place almost divine, and this alteration bred so many fears in her whom he addressed, that she could not pronounce one word. After waiting, as it seemed, for some remark or answer, and waiting in vain, the visitor resumed. "Madam, my name is Stagg. A friend of mine, who has desired the honour of meeting with you any time these 5 years past, has commissioned me to call upon you. I should be glad to whisper that gentleman's name in your ear." "Zounds, ma'am, are you deaf? Do you hear me say that I should be glad to whisper my friend's name in your ear?" "You need not repeat it," said the widow, with a stifled groan. "I see too well from whom you come." "But as a man of honour, ma'am," said the blind man, striking himself on the breast, "whose credentials must not be disputed, I take leave to say that I will mention that gentleman's name. Ay, ay," he added, seeming to catch with his quick ear the very motion of her hand, "but not aloud. With your leave, ma'am, I desire the favour of a whisper." She moved towards him, and stooped down. he muttered a word in her